Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. And one thing that we've been hearing about all month long, and really for that matter, all year long, might be concluding as early as next week. A new leak that seems pretty legitimate seemingly is teasing something God of War related, and after some detective work from fans across the internet, we might have a good idea as to when that announcement for Ragnarok will be made. It might be in June after all, as previously rumored, so we will talk about that later on today. Also, Xbox surprised the community once again, beating out the PlayStation 5 in their home territory. Definitely a huge surprise to many people out there, so make sure to stay tuned for all of that as well. Before we get started though, go ahead and make sure to hit that bell notification and subscribe button below. That way you can keep up to date with all of the latest gaming news, as I'm here every single week, Monday through Friday. With that said though, let's just go and jump right into things, starting off with Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones has had a bit of an interesting development cycle, as it took clear inspiration from 2013's Assassin's Creed Black Flag and its naval battles. A lot of people really enjoyed the naval battles in Black Flag, so I guess they decided that would make for a great standalone game, and then they officially announced Skull and Bones back in 2017. So that was really just the start of a very turbulent development cycle, to say the least. Since then, Skull and Bones has received various delays. There's been reports of an internal reboot, and from fans' perspectives, there was a real concern on whether or not this game would ever actually see the light of day. Well, the good news here is that it does seem like that it will after all, as a few ratings have popped up here recently, which is usually a good sign of an incoming announcement. We actually talked about this about a week or so ago in a previous video, but now on top of that, Tom Henderson posted a new report over on Tryhard Guides that claims Ubisoft is preparing to re-reveal Skull and Bones during the week of July 4th. Now, Tom Henderson, he has proven to be a very reliable insider, leaking out several accurate things in just the last month. So there's definitely a reason to believe that this could possibly be true. Again, with those ratings out there as well, this does kind of line up with that. So hopefully, for any of you wanting more information on Skull and Bones and how it's changed since we last saw it, which, I mean, it's been a while, but it looks like the wait is finally almost over. Moving on though, FromSoftware, they released a game earlier this year by the name of Elden Ring. You know, just a small little game and everything. You might have heard about it from somewhere before, but actually it looks like their next game might be coming sooner than expected. In an interview with 4Gamer, the Elden Ring director Miyazaki was asked about a statement he made back in 2018, where he stated that they had 3.5 games in development since 2016. Now, here we are 4 years later since that statement was made, and so far we've gotten 2.5 of those games, which are Sekiro, you also have Elden Ring, and then the half game was Derasine for PlayStation VR. That, however, still leaves one unannounced game unless it got canceled. So, 4Gamer, they asked him about that final game, and Miyazaki did reveal that it is indeed still in development. And not only that, but it's actually in its final stages of development. So again, based off of this information here, their next game might actually be right around the corner, and I think after Elden Ring, everybody's on the lookout for FromSoftware's next game. They're kind of the new it kid on the block, because they've truly hit mainstream now, and I mean, they've always been really popular among the hardcore crowd and everything, but Elden Ring, that game really has just kind of taken them to a whole new level in terms of popularity. Nonetheless, though, there's a lot of speculation out there as to what this unannounced game could possibly be, and it seems like there's a lot of belief that it could be Armored Core 6. There was a leak going around last year that seemingly appeared Armored Core related, and then also FromSoftware, they sent out a consumer survey earlier this year that mentioned Armored Core as well. So maybe Armored Core could be making a return sometime here soon. The last time we actually saw this franchise was back in 2012, so it's been a little while, and I think a lot of people would be really excited if this does turn out to be the case. If anything, it's worth keeping an eye on, and regardless of what this game turns out to be, I mean, it still looks like a new FromSoftware game will be coming sooner rather than later, which is always a great thing, in my opinion. Now, we also got an update for those PlayStation Classics once again, as Sony continues to roll out PlayStation Plus Premium to new regions across the world. The thing is, though, is that it seems like every region has been treated just a little bit different, with some regions getting access to the NTSC versions for PlayStation Classics, while others, they've been given the PAL version instead. Now, that might not necessarily sound like a big deal, but it absolutely is, because from a technical standpoint, the NTSC versions of these games are, they're just superior. The reason for that comes down to a very simple thing, and that's because the PAL games, they run at 50 Hz, while the NTSC games runs at 60 Hz. Now, considering TVs today, they run at 60 Hz, the PAL versions of these games are having some frame pacing problems, and as Digital Foundry pointed out, it feels like they're basically running in slow motion. It's just not been good so far, and while yes, the PAL versions, they do have more language options, a lot of fans out there, they've let it be known that they want the option of choosing for themselves. And the good news here is that Sony is indeed listening. PlayStation Europe posted this over on Twitter. We're planning to roll out NTSC options for a majority of classic games offered on the PlayStation Plus Premium and Deluxe plan in Asia, Europe, Middle East, India, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand regions. So there you have it. Sony is indeed listening, and they're looking to fix the issue by giving fans an option on which version they prefer to play. I really do think that that's the best way to go about this, as I've said in previous videos before, so kudos for them listening here. This is exactly what you want to see. Hopefully, they'll do this for all regions across the world, but overall, definitely great news. Now, the big news for PlayStation today, though, actually comes from a leak over on Twitter by the Snitch. And if you've been following game news over the last month or so, you probably know that the Snitch is legitimate. They've leaked out several things ahead of time, completely and 100% accurate. This includes Persona 3, 4, and 5 for Xbox, High on Life for Xbox, Hollow Knight Silksong coming over to Xbox Game Pass Day 1, Overwatch free to play, Final Fantasy Crisis Core Reunion multi-platform, and then The Last of Us Part 1's release date as well. This person has been leaking things left and right all month long, though how they do it is kind of like a riddle, if you will. They don't just flat out say what they're leaking, but instead what they do is they give us hints, and now they're doing the same thing with God of War Ragnarok. Last night, the Snitch posted a God of War GIF with the numbers 11110. Now, what exactly does that mean, though? What are they trying to tell us this time? And, well, fans, they did some detective work and discovered that 11110 in binary translates to the decimal 30. So with that in mind, and based on what Jason Schreier said earlier this month, and that they're planning to announce its release date at the end of June, could this possibly mean that we'll get an official announcement next Thursday on June 30th? It certainly seems very plausible here, definitely when you start to consider Cory Barlog. He's been very coy as of recent. He does seem to be teasing something over on Twitter as well, so everything seems to kind of be adding up right now. Thursday's also the day that Sony typically uses to do their state of plays. Though I think that that's kind of the next question here. If they really are going to announce God of War Ragnarok's release date next week, as is seemingly indicated here, how will they do that? Will it be done through a PlayStation State of Play? And I think that it could be, but not necessarily a big general PlayStation State of Play. I still do believe that that's coming this September instead, but what they could possibly do here is actually have a dedicated State of Play for God of War Ragnarok specifically. This is a huge and very important game after all, so it could easily have its own showcase, and well, they did actually do that last year with Horizon Forbidden West, revealing a ton of gameplay. So I could see them doing something very similar here with God of War Ragnarok. And then finally giving us that release date. Now, they could also just release a simple trailer, that can't be ruled out, or they could even announce a release date through a blog post. But again, considering just how big and important this game is, I very much could see it getting its own showcase. Either way, though, regardless on how they do this, based on the information that we have right now, June 30th looks to be the day to keep an eye on. Of course, as soon as we get an update, though, I'll let you all know as soon as possible. Moving on, though, Famitsu, they just posted their weekly Japan sales charts, and the results were once again very surprising. We'll get into the reason as to exactly why here in just a moment, but if we take a look at this, as you can see, Nintendo, they continue to just absolutely dominate with both its hardware and software. All of the top 10 best-selling games for the week were on the Nintendo Switch, which is pretty common by this point. But as you can see here, games like Switch Sports, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Mario Kart 8, Ring Fit, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate all continue to do really well for them. Also, Mario Strikers Battle League is holding its own at the number 3 best-selling game for the week, which is nice to see. But then, if you take a look at the best-selling hardware, this is where things kind of take a turn. Of course, you have Nintendo. They absolutely dominated once again, selling roughly 50,000 Switch units over in Japan, so no real big surprise there. But then second place, being the big standout here, goes to the Xbox Series, which sold 6,695 units for the week, beating out the PlayStation 5 for the second time in the last 6 weeks. In fact, both the Xbox Series S and the Series X individually outsold the PlayStation 5, which sold 3,035 units total. Now, this is a very rare sight in Japan to see Xbox outsell PlayStation, and before 2022, the last time this actually happened was way back in 2014 for the launch of the Xbox One. But here we are in 2022, 8 years later, and it's happened twice in the last 6 weeks. So this is why this is just so surprising, though at the same time, I mean, we have to talk about the elephant in the room here, and that's stock supply. It is very evident that PlayStation is having some pretty major supply shortages over in places like Japan, though at the same time, I still want to recognize just how much Xbox has actually improved in Japan this generation. Just because there are supply issues due to the chip shortage, I mean, we can't ignore that, but still, we can't necessarily overlook Xbox's improvement over there either. You know, we've talked about it before, but the Xbox Series has already outsold the Xbox One lifetime over in Japan, and it's pushing some solid numbers for the brand on a weekly basis. While it won't necessarily sell as many units as PlayStation, or definitely the Nintendo Switch in Japan this generation as a whole, it could still end up being a big success for Microsoft, and I think that it could possibly hit that million milestone if they can continue their momentum going forward. So far, the Xbox Series has sold roughly 240,000 units in Japan, and if they can continue to bring over Japanese games like they have been, such as Persona, they'll have Soul Hackers come later this year, they got AI Somnium Files this year, they got Danganronpa now, Tales of Arise, Yakuza, Scarlet Nexus, they got Nier, Dragon Quest XI, that was a huge one, and etc, etc. If they can just continue to bring over these beloved franchises, and maybe even get more of these niche franchises such as Legends of Heroes, the East games as an example, and so on and so forth, if they can bring those games over to Xbox and maybe even get that continued Game Pass support from Japanese developers as we've seen, I think they could reach that coveted million mark this generation. If anything, I think that they'll consistently put up some solid numbers as we've seen pretty much the entire generation so far. They've done well for themselves over there, and I think that them having a couple of victories here as of recent, even if partially due to stock supply, it still highlights that they're doing something right. I mean, people aren't buying a console for $500 if they're not doing something right. So big congrats to Xbox for all their success over in Japan so far this generation. Let's go and take a look at the poll of the day, though, and we're going to talk about God of War Ragnarok once again, as I asked you all on whether or not you believe Sony will announce its official release date this month in June. And despite a lot of information maybe indicating that that could be the case, most of you all believe it won't happen, with 68% of you saying no, while only 25% of you said yes. That does actually surprise me a bit, but I'm curious. Now that the Snitch seems to be indicating a possible June 30th announcement, have you all changed your mind, or do you still think that it's not going to happen? Now for me, I'll say that I do think that we're going to get an announcement this month. You know, I could be wrong, but even if not for Jason Schreier and the Snitch, Cory Barlog, he's the one that's really grabbed my attention this month, as he seems to be teasing something. I mean, I sure hope he is, because I'm definitely ready for that full God of War Ragnarok reveal with a confirmed release date. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.